Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real People, Real Health. I am excited and honored to have in the studio coming in from Costa Rica, Kristin Grayce McGary. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks so much for having me.
We met a number of months ago through social media, and you were supposed to come in at a much earlier date, and timing was such that I had to postpone it. We kept in touch, and over the last number of months, I actually asked you to look after a friend of mine and do some work with him when you were up in Seattle. His name is Michael, and so Michael actually got to meet you before I have. Um, but I'd like to thank you for that and doing some work with him while you're up in Seattle on business. Um, at the same time, I'd like to really share some of your bio, and then we'll get into your backstory and we'll go from there. Um, Kristin Grayce is a health and lifestyle expert, internationally recognized author and speaker. She is an authority on autoimmunity, functional blood chemistry analysis, thyroid and gut health, alleviating pain, family wellness, extreme exhaustion, resolving blocks to healing, and food as medicine. Kristin Grayce specializes in integrated mind, body, and spirit in healthcare through a uniquely individualized approach. She offers more than 2 decades of education, clinical experience, and wisdom to her patients, weaving dozens of modalities together to compassionately meet you where you are and guide you to vibrant health. Renowned for her health detective work, she helps successful high achievers under stress, taking the guesswork out of healthcare, working to resolve patients' root imbalances, helping them to regain lasting energy and live with more vitality. She empowers patients to revitalize and reconnect to their most brilliant self and to fulfill the mission of sharing their gifts with the world. Today, she is an author of Holistic Keto for Gut Health, a program for resetting your metabolism, and a second book that's also coming out in 2020, Know Your Blood, Know Your Health, Prevent Disease and Enjoy Vibrant Health Through Functional Blood Chemistry Analysis. There is a lot there to your bio, but what's most important is what the story is behind the bio. And there is where I'd like to invite you to, I'm going to put you on a full screen while I take a few minutes just to share this out across multiple channels that Spirituality Gone Wild is connected with. And so again, welcome to the studio. And I'm just going to give you free liberty to really start to share your backstory and how your life changed while you were actually in medical school, and that brought you to this moment today. So welcome to the studio.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you so much. Really delightful to be here with everyone. Thanks for watching and being open to learning and growing and being on your path. I have an incredible life. I live in Costa Rica, and as Jay pointed out, I'm a speaker and an author. And I joke, I'm even the youngest grandmother on the planet. And it wasn't always this way. Many years ago, I had debilitating symptoms. I had been vegan and very mindful of the food I was eating. I had been a competitive bodybuilder and athlete, and I thought I had been doing it all right. I thought I was healthy. My body was ripped and looked amazing, and I felt strong in the gym. And then little by little, I started to develop these, what I call mysterious symptoms, like migraines and gas and bloating. And I started to get horrible spasming and trigger point pain all over my body. I started to not sleep well, and it was horrible. And I would go from doctor to doctor, like, help me, there's something wrong. And they would look at me like I was crazy. And they would say, there's nothing wrong with you. Your labs look fine. Everything's quote unquote normal. And I started to think it was mental, like there was something wrong with my head. And they would send me to a counselor or psychologist, and they would look at me like, you're fine. You've got a physical problem. Go back to your doctor. And I would do that. And this game of going back and forth into these different doctors continued. And I felt really frustrated and lost, and I was searching for answers, and I was doing it at that time in a way which was the only way I knew how, which was outside of myself. And I had been pre-med at the University of Arizona and ready, poised for medical school. I was a nationally board certified EMT and volunteered in the emergency room and learned a lot and was quite the overachiever, which was a pattern that contributed to my symptoms. And I discovered that later on. And little by little, I had more difficulty getting out of bed. In between all this, I met an amazing man and decided to have a baby. And quickly, my symptoms resolved for a very short period of time during that pregnancy, which was a huge relief and surprise. And I became a single parent for various reasons, and again started to have these debilitating episodes. I recall one around Thanksgiving when my son was just a couple months young, and I had so much pain and spasming, I couldn't even lift him up to nurse. My mom had to put pillows under my arms. I couldn't lift the fork to my mouth to eat Thanksgiving dinner. And I knew in that moment something had to change. This angel baby in front of me motivated me and helped somehow inspire an inner strength that I thought was diminishing or gone. And I then committed in a totally new way to my health, not just for me, but in order to raise this baby, and began a new kind of search that included an inner search. One of the most pivotal therapies for me was functional blood chemistry analysis. It planted a seed and started to give me a look inside my body that no other doctor or naturopath could do. And to me, that knowledge became power because I could better discern and make choices based on what was actually going on inside my body. And I learned I had various kinds of anemia and digestive issues. I found out I had celiac disease, and my mind was blown open. I also began working with several other more holistically inclined doctors and therapists, and I was using electrodermal screening to help me peel off the layers of some toxicity that was showing up in my with symptoms, such as a lot of heavy metal poisoning and toxicity, which we confirmed with other blood and urine tests. And so I began to peel off these layers, but it wasn't just physical. And I thought it was. And I was going down a very physical track and treating it physically, although emotionally I was exhausted and felt that there were unresolved things that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And what I discovered in my own path was every symptom that I was experiencing was a message. It was as if my body was speaking a specific language to me, sharing with me unresolved pieces of my history through symptoms, through pain, through spasms, through repeated bladder infections, through migraines, through gas and bloating, through food sensitivities, through thyroid disorder. And as I began to peel off those deeper layers, that's when things really shifted. And I was better able to lift myself out of those illnesses and those symptoms. I have not had a fibromyalgia, quote unquote, episode in almost 23 years.
Beautiful.
I have been completely healed from that. And although I had many incredible therapists and modalities that helped me along the way, what was most important is that I became empowered and could heal myself. And they were part of my team. They were part of what I would say was a mirror to show me where things were out of balance, not just biochemically, but also emotionally. And then I developed tools and found tools and developed my own tools that I went on to share with others. I ended up changing tracks and going to Asian medical school and getting certified in functional medicine and forms of osteopathy, advanced cranial sacral therapy, and somato-emotional release, and most recently psychosomatic therapy and homeopathy. I mean, there are dozens, and very,
Quick
very
question
blessed.
for you. Let me interject here for a moment, if I may. When you were on this new path of wellness, when you were in a lot of pain, that was probably when you kind of shifted your direction. This is probably before the internet was probably in its infancy, I suspect. It had to have
There was
been.
no internet. I
Okay.
didn't have any internet.
Okay.
Yeah, no
Okay.
cell phones.
Right. Exactly. So where I'm going with this is there is so much incredible information available today for somebody that is ready to experience the empowerment that you're describing here. But in the day, how did you have your awakening, and how were you able to gather the information and data and research when you were limited due to a lack of information at your fingertips, which is a very different experience for people today?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
There were multiple ways. I believe I was very blessed to meet certain people on my path that acted as signposts pointing in various directions. And I believe we all have that in everyday life, but we're not all listening. We're not all paying attention. And for me, I was at such a critical point, some may say crisis, health crisis point, that it was like the choiceless choice. I had to listen. I had to listen. And these people would come into my life, or an article would come into my life, or I'd be in the grocery store and I would overhear someone talking about a homeopathic remedy. And one time I went to the doctor, a Western medical physician, about 24, 25 years ago, snuck me a homeopathic. He said, "Don't tell anyone I'm giving this to you. Take this." And then I started studying homeopathy. I wanted to learn, what is this? He's like, "It's like a sugar pill, but it'll work." So I was so inspired that a physician would do this. And I was waking up little by little through listening. And I began to listen to my body in new ways and be guided through my body. And I began a meditation practice and had some friend sit with me and do meditation. I had someone teaching me Qigong. I began to, get involved in a different way, and then joined Asian medical school. And that opened up a whole new world of looking at the body as, I write about this in two of my books, looking at the body as a garden versus a machine. And this paradigm shift of looking at health instead of disease or illness. Health is more than the absence of disease. It's actually something more than that. It's vibrancy. It's your ability to adapt. It's wholeness. And this paradigm shift in Asian medical school was another piece of that awakening for me, and another way I began to get more information and get resourced.
Beautiful. What do you think was when did the light switch turn on? Because here you were in medical school, and your body started to speak to you. But what do you think was the most defining moment when you knew that the traditional course of treatment for any of your diagnoses was not aligned with you? Like, what was that moment when you woke up and it was like, this is not the choices, this is not this is not the choice I'm willing to take, and there are alternatives that you may not have been aware of at that moment?
I feel emotional as you're asking me the question. I remember the time that that switch turned on for me, and it's vulnerable to share it.
Beautiful.
I was laying on the bathroom floor in my son's father's apartment. He became a very severe addict and alcoholic at that time, and I was in a very abusive situation and had a lot of symptoms, and was doing my best to raise this infant and care for him in a way that felt right, like breastfeeding him and cuddling him and, just soothing him whenever he was upset, doing my best to read books about parenting and child rearing. And there had been a big fight with him because he was using, and I was on the floor in the bathroom sobbing, and something switched in me. I had so much pain in my body, and just something switched, and I had this deep awakening and awareness, and that this can never go on, that this has to stop right here and now, and I'm the only one who could stop it. And although it seemed like I was stopping an abusive relationship, what was really happening is I was shifting something deep in my body that was going to allow it to heal, and leaving that relationship with my infant, my newborn, began the path of a deeper healing for me that opened doors to the emotional and spiritual aspects of why I had manifested all of these symptoms. That's the one time where I really had that switch. And it was after that that I began to get better.
Kristin Grayce, I would like to take a moment here just to honor you and thank you for sharing in this moment a very vulnerable experience that brought you back to that moment. If at any time I should ask you a question that you are uncomfortable with love, you can set a loving boundary, and I will respect you for that. My intention is always to provide a safe space and environment in this moment, and so I want to just thank you for your willingness to go there, and let you know again I appreciate you. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. And I feel safe. Thank you. And I'm not afraid to share from those places. I I feel it was a significant part of my healing, and I think it's important to share those darker, more painful, and even vulnerable times of my own life and awakening, even if it had abuse and pain, because there might be someone else out there that's having a similar experience. And if I can model that I went through that and I got through it, then maybe it could help someone else.
Beautiful. You mentioned earlier there's an emotional component to getting sick, disease, diagnosis, and you've acknowledged that you were in a crisis as a new mom with your husband. Unfortunately, in traditional Western care, um, most doctors that I've experienced working with over my own healing journey are not trained on that part of disease, on the emotional component. And so their focus is 99%, if not 100%, on treating the symptoms of the disease. There are some doctors out there that, like Dr. Sadeghi, Habib Sadeghi, who wrote the Clarity Cleanse. He's been on the Heal documentary and the Hay House Heal Summit this past October, and he's one of these doctors that is in fact does cross over and focuses as much attention, if not more, on the emotional component. What is behind the disease? What got us there in the first place? Do you, when you went through this for yourself, this healing journey of mind, body, and soul to get healthy, do you, at that time, did you focus just on the relationship with your ex-husband, or did you go further back into your earlier childhood? Were there shadows there that needed to be looked at as well? And how did that play out for you?
Yes, yes, and yes. So
Beautiful.
I want to honor and acknowledge the Western medical model and that particular paradigm first, because the way it's set up, the way that industry is set up, is based on working with illness. It's a sick care system, as I call it. And I don't think it's all bad. If someone has a compound fracture, please go to the emergency room and get surgery and have that repaired. Or if someone has a raging infection, please go to Western medicine and address that. And then understand that there are underlying factors that created the conditions to allow that infection or that informed that accident that caused that compound fracture. So for me, yes, there were other pieces. Yes, there was physical stuff going on. For example, I had been vegan and vegetarian for many years, and I was very, very depleted. And I had had a really tough upbringing. I had really intelligent, beautiful parents that did their very best with me. And my father had significant mental health issues that he struggled with. And this impacted my upbringing. I had a very traumatic incident when I was 16 years young. I experienced date rape, and that informed a lot of protection that I had developed. I had been a competitive bodybuilder because I wanted to build up my external muscles to be strong, to be safe, to feel safe. And when I realized that that was just an external protection and wasn't really developing my internal strength, then I shifted my focus to looking more at my internal strength and the root of that. So in my own journey of healing from the symptoms of fibromyalgia, I came to understand the multiple layers that needed to be peeled off and how individualized that is for every one of us. And to me, it's not so much the answer to particular questions, it's what questions are we asking? What questions are we asking our bodies? What questions am I asking my patients that help awaken in them more awareness and clarity around their structures and strategies of protection, the soft, tender spots of old unresolved pain or trauma. In my own life, it wasn't just emotional. I had also had a really severe car accident when I was 16. I had a lot of stuff go down in my world when I was 16. That was a big time in my life. I had a rollover car accident, and it was a miracle that I survived. And that was another wake up call as a young person that helped guide the direction of my life. And peeling off the fascial restrictions and holding the memories, the cell memory of that car accident was a piece that needed to be dealt with, that needed to be honored as part of my picture at that time. And so that was something I found through advanced cranial sacral therapy and somato-emotional release, new ways of listening to my tissues, new ways of listening to my body. And then I was able to translate that to working with my patients and being able to listen to their bodies, even one cell of their body with my hands, and able to see and feel their stories and their strategies through all sorts of means, as well as reading them, being able to look at their face structure, the structure of their physical body, where they carry tissue, all gave me information, how they walked, how they spoke, when they paused, if they didn't, all was giving me information that was coming in through my senses very rapidly, and it would allow me to, with love and compassion, offer them an opportunity to touch that raw, painful, unresolved place in order to heighten their awareness, to harmonize it instantly. And so it was because I went through years of doing that with myself, layer by layer, not having a book, not having a plan laid out for me, that I developed the capacity to individualize that for others.
You've said a lot. Taking a moment just to pause so that we can all absorb what you shared. Um, you mentioned food is medicine. Can you tell me more about that? What type of food is medicine, and how has that impacted either your own health or witnessing your own patients' improvement?
I get very excited about food. I'm a foodie. And to me, it's a doorway into a part of us as humans. And I love entering through that doorway and bringing people with me and offering them a new perspective of food and sustenance. And food represents sustenance, not only physically, but spiritually. So I also get very excited about soul food, not just physical food. And we've spoken briefly. Sometimes food is not eating food is just as therapeutic at times. Doing intermittent fasting can be just as therapeutic as eating food. And so as a foodie, and as someone who really honors food as medicine, I'm able to discern and weigh and balance and individualize for myself and my patients how to play in that new paradigm of food as medicine. And just as much as food is medicine, food can also be a poison. Just like there are incredible herbs growing around me in the forest, the rainforest in Costa Rica in which I live. If you eat just a little bit, it's amazing. And if you eat too much, it can be a poison. And the same is with a lot of the foods that you find in the supermarket. So to be specific around what foods are medicine and what foods maybe are poison, I think is more individualized. And looking at someone's biochemistry, looking at their emotional makeup, looking at their motivation for food and around food. I think in our culture, in our country, I have witnessed a lot of imbalances around how we nourish our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And I came from a household where my mother used food to stuff her feelings because she had so much pain, and she didn't have the tools to understand how to work through all those emotions, so she would eat. And I rebelled against that and disconnected from that model when I was about 15. And I'm so blessed that somehow I had the tools to do that. But it also planted seeds in me that light me up to empower other people to rewire their brain and their body for healthy acts of self-love, which is nourishment on all levels, and food is one. So I like to re-educate people and introduce them to food in a totally new way. And I do that depending on where the sticky spots are in people. You know, some people feel like they're addicted to sugar or coffee, or their blood sugar's wonky, or they eat on the go and they're eating fast and they don't have any time to make food, or they quote unquote, I hate cooking. I hear this, I hate cooking. I'm not going to cook anything. I can't cook anything. And depending on where those sticky spots are, there's a beautiful opportunity to heighten our awareness and reconnect to our higher selves and a deeper truth, and to also retrace into our past where those beliefs arose. So something I learned from a good friend of mine, Dr. Darren Weissman, he's a Hay House author. He says, all beliefs are learned, and not everything we learn is the truth.
Amen. Amen. So one of the lines that I have repeated many times over the last 4+ years is when I had my awakening, as I was laying in a hospital for close to a week, I realized that everything that I thought was the truth may in fact be a lie, and everything that I thought was a lie may in fact be truth. And that really was my mantra for myself. When I exited out of the hospital and I went through a rebirthing process, it was about me surrendering all of my belief system, being willing to thank my mom and dad for gifting me that, but then giving it back to them in my own ceremonial way. And it's a powerful experience that I now guide my own coaching clients through. Because once we realize that we're almost on autopilot in so many, if not most aspects of our life, living through a belief system that has been handed down from decades, centuries ago, perhaps. The family line is long. And we're talking about crossing over into different countries, the old countries, and everything that goes with it. And for me, part of healing process has been really self-discovery, which is I knew who I had become, but I didn't know who I was. I had lost myself in my life. And the self-discovery was really learning who I was at my own root, at my own deepest level. And what are my values? Who am I? And how do I want to truly live my life? And what is my purpose? And everything that goes with it. So you just hit on a really hot subject for me that is powerful, because as long as we're living in someone else's belief system and we think it's ours, we're not truly connected with really what's important, which is really getting to know what is important to us, not what we were taught. Truly, what is of value? What are our values? So
Beautiful.
I love that.
Beautiful. Yes. I get excited just hearing you speak about it. It reminds me of how we guide people to, or at least I guide people, it sounds like you do as well, to lean into those beliefs with curiosity, to acknowledge if there's fear, and then be open and courageous and committed enough to yourself and your purpose to lean into the uncomfortable beliefs or the uncomfortable truths that we might have been afraid to embrace or entertain before. And when we lean into those sharp edges of shadow or discomfort or the sticky spots of our belief, wherever we hate something or resist something or want to push it away, when we do that, we wake up a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's as if a light is being shown uh, onto our higher selves so we can connect more deeply and anchor it in. And then it can flow and impact every area of our life, not just health, but every area. So I get very excited as you were sharing because I'm also very passionate about this. We value it very much, and love that you're sharing it more with so many people and getting that message out there and coaching people through that. It's really inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As I'm listening to you, what came up for me from within is, as a professional, you are compensated to guide your patients to wellness, to wholeness, to releasing and dissolving the disease that no longer serves them. I am curious, how have how has your transformation, your own personal healing, influenced or impacted the people closest in your own personal life?
Part of the answer is you may want to ask them. I can speak from my experience and my interpretation, and they may have different responses.
Of
I
course.
I believe that it's benefited them, that the work that, this is my belief structure and my personal experience, that the work that I have done has allowed me to show up more fully in my higher self, which then benefits everyone around me, including my patients. That my own quest for truth, my own inner and external journey to wellness and wholeness helped me develop specific and unique capacities to be able to hold space and guide others, and also show up in relationship with my family and friends and community in a beautiful and profound way, to be a guide. And I'm always intending to have the highest benefit for all beings. That's my daily intention, is to show up in my highest, fullest self, to be of the highest benefit and good for all beings on the planet and beyond. I pray that that's unfolding each and every day, and that the lives that I touch, that it does make a difference, whether that person paid me or not. It could just be, I had an interaction in a grocery store in the United States recently that was just really touching with the cash register person. And it can be that simple. I was sitting at a woman's house 2 days ago in a little town here in Costa Rica, and she was going to make me a dress. She's a beautiful seamstress, and she does it on the side for friends. And her son came to me with a lot of stomach problems and wanted to have a conversation, and it turned into this beautiful spiritual exploration. And he's 23, and he's ripe and just open to learn and connect to his higher self, and wants to wants to learn about the world and spirit and himself. And he's so open and so curious and courageous. And we just had these beautiful couple of minutes of talking about both of our stories thus far. And it was just this magical moment that I can't, words don't really
Well,
portray. And
yeah. Yeah.
and so
Well,
I hope that
they
we're
do.
in that, every day,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
every day we're showing up in our higher selves the best we can. And even if we have pain, even if we have symptoms, I don't see anyone as broken or sick. I was working with a medicine man, probably 20 years ago, and we had some shared patients. And I was talking about their illnesses and their Asian medical diagnoses and their imbalances. And he said, Kristin, wait. He says, we don't treat people who are sick. What are you talking about? He said, we treat whole, unique, healthy individuals. And that clicked something in me forevermore. I never treat anyone sick, no matter what their symptoms, no matter what their diagnosis is. I treat whole, healthy individuals. They may have symptoms, they may have manifestations. Their body might be speaking to them through a language of stress and symptoms, but that doesn't make them sick or unwhole. It's just they may have forgotten aspects of their wholeness.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. If someone is watching right now and they are in the throes of an autoimmune flare up or diagnosis or both, and they have been in a loop in a cycle of pharmaceuticals and suffering and pain of some sort, depending on the diagnosis, for some time, could be even be a decade or two, what would you suggest it's going to take for them to get well?
Well, the first thing that came to me was the reminder of hope and the reminder of remaining courageous, possibly in the face of the Western medical model that is amazing and very partial. And next, what comes in is to cultivate a team approach to wellness. I think very often we want to go outside of ourselves and we want to give our power away to physicians or psychiatrists. And it's just something we learned. It's just the healthcare model in which we live in. It's approved by society. And I would invite that person to own their power and consider being on a team and taking a team approach and bringing in other perspectives of health and wellness, not only the Western medical perspective, but other vantage points. And then sitting with that and connecting to a deeper desire to inquire as to the root of this imbalance in your body, your mind, your relationships, your field of energy, your spirit, your soul. I believe it is in the deep inquiry and the stillness that the answers arise. And I have yet to work with a patient that has been unable to find those answers for themselves when they're held in a therapeutic way and honored as the individual that they are. I believe that it takes a great act of self-love to embark on that journey of self-inquiry. I know for myself, some of the things I learned about myself felt really yucky, and I felt shame about them. And then I got to work with where the shame came from and the belief and the patterns and the stuff I learned in childhood. And it took a lot of courage to be able to identify and address the parts of myself and my strategies of protection that were no longer really serving me or anyone around me. And so those are the beginning pieces I would share with someone who would be in the throes of that. And my science mind can come on, and I can put my science hat on and want to look at someone's labs and want to look at their gut health and their immune modulation and their, you know, their DNA and all that stuff. But ultimately, that just feels like icing on the cake. The actual foundation is a deeper level of inquiry.
If I may paraphrase you, what I heard is that it takes a willingness, a desire for an individual to say, I want more answers. I'm not accepting. I'm willing to accept the diagnosis, but I'm not willing to live with a prognosis. And therefore, take me there, lead me there, allow me to explore, allow me to discover, allow me to learn, allow me the time to invest the time to seek answers. Even if it means we gotta be willing to cross state lines, country lines, and learning how to trust, not rely on blind faith with one medical doctor that gives you a diagnosis and a prognosis, which basically says, at least with autoimmune, there are no cures. All we could do is manage the symptoms. And so here's the pharmaceuticals. See you in 3 months.
And I received that when I was really sick. Eventually, I was diagnosed by a rheumatologist. I was going to school in DC for a year. I went to a deaf university, Gallaudet University in Washington, DC, and it was there that I was so blessed. I found a rheumatologist who gave me the label of fibromyalgia. And at first, it was a huge relief because that meant I wasn't crazy anymore.
Right.
And I was so grateful for that. And then I spent the next 2 years peeling off that label. It was a gift in strange wrapping. To have the label meant I wasn't crazy. And I also had to get honest with myself and curious if it was true, if that was the sentence I was going to accept. And it didn't feel right. It was like, no, I'm not going to have this for the rest of my life. My body, I knew enough science. I had taken biology. I knew enough that my body knows how to heal. If I have a cut on my finger, I don't have to think about it healing. The white blood cells go immediately. I start producing different kinds of chemicals and enzymes to fight infection and to mend that tissue. And I don't have to think about it. It happens. My body's designed to heal. Your body is designed to heal. And so once I got the label and felt relieved, then I needed to peel the label off. And who am I without the label? Who am I without debilitating pain? I became so habituated to the pain, to not sleeping well, to waking up feeling like I had been run over by a Mack truck. Well, who am I if I don't have those things? Who am I if I wake up vibrant and healthy every day? Whoa. It was like a mind bender. It was like a riddle that I was determined to solve. And that's, you know, tying into diagnoses and tying into that path that we go on. I've worked with people who have the diagnosis and symptoms of cancer, and it can be very, very, very frightening. Or different autoimmune diseases that feel like a death sentence. It can be terrifying to sit in the doctor's office and receive this label. And yet what I would empower people with is that is one perspective, and it's okay to receive that. And there is very likely a lot more to the picture. And I would invite people to get curious about that and explore all those other vantage points. I feel it's a more holistic approach to healthcare in general.
Beautiful. You mentioned the gut. And so I'd like to just take a few minutes to go there and ask you, from your experience, what does the gut have to do with any of this?
Thanks for asking. Since the first book I wrote is about holistic keto for gut health, I love the gut. The gut's really important. The enteric nervous system is the nervous system associated with your gut. And there's some really cool research out there, gets me very excited, that if the central nervous system connections to your gut are severed, your enteric nervous system still works. It's so cool. Uh, so the gut is the throne of immune function. About 75% of immune function is stemming from your gut. So a healthy, happy gut often means a very healthy, happy immune system, as well as hormonal system, as well as a neurobiological system. Your neurobiology is very connected to your gut. You make more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain. And
Beautiful.
yeah, it's so important. And
I'm gonna ask you
yeah,
to pause just for one
please.
moment here. I want to just reiterate. You just connected neurological disorders to the gut. So we
Yes.
have an epidemic with dementia and Alzheimer's in this country. We also have an epidemic with teenagers. Right now, more teenagers are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
Mhm.
Neurological diseases such as dementia, Alzheimer's, migraines, even MS, which I believe is a neurological disorder. Are you inferring that those diseases don't start in the brain, but they actually start in the gut? Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for all of us.
Sure, anytime. It's important to clarify this. I think a lot of people, it's been my experience that a lot of people are not making that connection. And the the old saying, you are what you eat, is not exactly true. You are more what you can break down, digest, and absorb. And if that happens to be good stuff, great. The gut is so spectacular. And it's not just how we chew our food and eat our food and digest our food and absorb our food. There are emotions as well. And Asian medicine, 6,000-year-old medicine, has really stood the test of time and has shown us, given us really interesting evidence of emotions in our gut and the associations of the various meridians and acupuncture points and their connection to spirit, to our higher selves, to the divine, to the elements around us. And when I think of the elements around us and tying that into the gut in Asian medicine, I think of our microbiome, and it is the garden in our gut, and how our environment toxicity, whether it's from glyphosates, from Roundup, or other pesticides, herbicides, GMO food, maybe it's perfumes, the fragrances that are on the market around the holiday season are neurotoxins, and they also damage our gut. It could be the lotions and the potions being put on your skin that have chemicals that literally damage the epithelial, the lining of your intestines. It could be stress. Have you ever walked into a room and had the gut feeling that you weren't supposed to be there and you needed to leave? Or right before something bad happened, you had a gut feeling like something's not right. And the gut is very connected because of the nervous system connections, the enteric nervous system connections to our brain. There are more nervous system fibers going from our gut to our brain than our brain to our gut. And that's just science. That's not a belief. they've counted them. They can find a lot of them. And what we found so far is that's the scientific biological truth. And so what we eat, how we eat, not just food, but emotions, energy, our relationships impact our gut. I worked with someone recently, and the question that came to me as I was working with her, she was having lots of digestive stuff. She had acid reflux and it was burning. And the question is what aren't you able to stomach? What are you so bitter about in your life? And she just broke down crying. And it was, we touched that sweet pain spot that allowed her to open to the deeper truth of what had been going on, what she had been suppressing in her physical body, that her physical body was trying to show her and inform her about, so that she could release it and harmonize it and re-experience her wholeness and vibrancy. And so the gut is a passion of mine, and really fun to go into and explore. So thank you for asking and
You're welcome.
indulging me.
Your new book, uh, Holistic Keto for the Gut. What
For gut
is
health.
what does holistic keto mean?
That's a great question. For me, the typical or standard keto diet, which was acknowledged in the 1920s, it was used by Western medicine to treat children that had seizure disorders. And they had such profound success and results with these kids on this high fat, low to no carb diet that the scientific world took notice. And then it kind of got buried a little bit because, well, I have my own reasons why I think it got buried. It's, we don't live in a very preventative medical paradigm. We live in a paradigm currently where physicians are trained to treat symptoms and diseases rather than prevent them. And that's okay. It's appropriate at certain times. It's just very partial. And so this isn't a new fad diet. It's a therapeutic approach to wellness that's been around a long time and has quite a bit of research on it. And I am a research geek, and I quote a lot of the research in my book. And where I think people have missed the boat, they start to do something called dirty keto, which is eating high fat, might be low or no carb, but the kind of fats, the quality and the amount could be really unhealthy, like Wendy's. Wendy's burgers, no bun. Lay on the cheese and the bacon. And people are successful at releasing a lot of weight on keto, even dirty keto. And they're simultaneously causing other problems by not discerning and listening to their body and their biochemistry in a deeper way. So my version, holistic keto, is different than the standard keto in that it focuses on foods that support gut health. And some people are very surprised when I say, that means no dairy. That means no nuts. That means no eggs for a period of time as you're healing the gut. It could mean intermittent fasting. It means no grains. It means nightshades are probably not a good choice for you. And so my holistic approach incorporates these different food choices that are geared towards gut health, but that's not all. The holistic approach is also looking at lifestyle, hydration. Are we dealing with our emotions? How are we showing up in our relationship to self and others? How's our relationship to money? What's our relationship to food as sustenance, nourishment, or as a strategy of protection, or as self-soothing? It explores much more holistically. I even have a chapter on with some journaling exercises and some self-inquiry in my book as part of the more holistic approach. I don't believe that keto is or any nutritional plan is only about food. It's also about how do we feed our soul? How do we nourish our relationships, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to our children, our partners, our business, nature, each other. And so that's how I've woven in a more holistic approach, and that's why I've named it that.
When a patient says to you in this moment, boy, oh boy, this sounds like a lot of work, what's your response? Is this work, Kristin Grayce?
That depends on the patient's perspective. So I believe when I was first on my own healing journey, it was work because of the paradigm I was living in, because of what I had learned about healing, about getting a diagnosis and fighting to get better. We hear fight for the cure. I don't believe healthcare is about fighting. I don't believe we obtain vibrant health through fighting.
So
I reframe that.
when someone says to you, if I may, I'm battling cancer, what's your spin on that? I know I just deviated off, and I'll invite you to come back, but
Sure.
we hear that all the time. All the time. I'm battling. I'm surviving. I'm a survivor. I'm battling cancer.
Mm-hmm. Well, my first approach always, and if anyone out there is using this language, I want to honor that sense of battle in you, because it's true. Mm-hmm. It really is true in the moment, and it's not bad, and it's not wrong to come to the table with that heartfelt sense of, no, I have to fight this, because it's what we've learned. And from there, then I would begin to introduce some other perspectives on how we can work with, rather than battling and killing cancer, what if we connect your immune system to vibrant health? What if we wake up, we awaken the part of you that is so powerful, it could obliterate your internal organs in a nanosecond. You have these cells of your immune system that are so strong, you could actually devour your own organs and liquefy them in like 9 minutes or less. So your immune system has this capability. How about we take some time and focus on awakening this other part of your system? And so I would begin to introduce other viewpoints of working with the body, the physiology. And I'd like to add that whenever anyone has the symptoms of cancer, there is always an underlying root. And after about 5 minutes with that person, we usually find it together. And it's usually a very heartwarming, tender moment of realization and awakening.
Yeah. Yes.
And when that happens, often the sense of fight can fall away. The battle can stop because the new understanding has come into the consciousness.
If I may paraphrase you, what I believe I just heard you say is that when we're battling, we're at war, we're angry. What I heard you say is, if we change our perspective from being angry to opening up our heart space to love and taking on this journey of healing as the greatest gift of love and self-expression that you may give to yourself, or that you may have experienced for the first time in your life. We spend our lives living in fight or flight, which is living in sympathetic nervous system response mode, which creates the perfect storm for disease. And when we switch to love, we're initiating the parasympathetic. Now, I think I got this right, Doc? Am I onto something here? So ultimately, the greatest way to heal is to heal from within, coming to terms and reconnecting with yourself and identifying the areas in your life that have in fact impacted your health, and embracing the change, embracing the shift in your life that you need to make so you can heal. Coming from the space of love, not hate, from the space of love, not anger, right?
I, yes, yes. And there's a piece, there's a pitfall that it feels important. It feels very alive as I'm listening to you to just name the pitfall, that it's not a denial of the emotion of anger. That I think sometimes people will want to push the anger away because they think they have to come from love. So if they just push that away, if I just keep thinking love, if I can just, put up my affirmations on my bathroom mirror, then everything will be fine. And the pitfall here is that that's working with the conscious mind, which is only running about 5% of your show. And what I'm speaking to is going below the conscious mind into the unconscious or subconscious, depending on who you are and how you name it, to stir up and reveal the deeper ingrained patterns of anger and hatred, so that we can transcend and include them, is a saying that Ken Wilber would use in the integral model, to transcend and include the anger and hate through various practices so that you're authentically coming from love, not the suppression, like, oh, there's kind of this pitfall in the spiritual realm or the spiritual world, spiritual communities of it's all love. We just got to be love. We just got to be open hearted and love. But to me, that's partial. And we can get trapped there and ignore the shadow that is important to bring into the light and honor and love that. If we can love that anger, if we can learn to befriend the anger, befriend the war, then we can transcend and include it. And then love is just love. It just flows. It's effortless. There is no work.
Beautiful. You got it. Thank you. Thank you for that eloquent answer. It really isn't about work. It's about coming home, right? It's about
Beautiful.
really
Well
coming back home to ourselves. And basically it's disrobing. It's removing all of the external people, places, and things, the barriers that have led us to this moment in our life. And the coming home truly is disrobing, coming back to the day we were born. We were born without clothing. We were born vulnerable, loving, whole. That's what coming home is about. When we come home, we heal.
beautiful. Well said.
You're not going to believe it, but we are actually over the hour.
Oh.
And here's my truth, Kristin Grayce. We could probably spend 3 more hours. There's so many topics. There's so many angles that I'd love to deep dive in with you right now. But in the spirit of respecting your time and our community's time, what I'd like to do is invite you to be a guest, come back onto the show another time, and we could explore other topics in that moment. But with what time we do have left, if people want to get hold of you and they want to either read your books, reach out to you, explore doing some work with you, asking some questions so that they can determine if it's a good fit, what is the best way for them to reach you?
My website has all of my contact info and has information around opportunities to work with me or see me speak or come to a book presentation and signing. I have other speaking engagements in 2020. I do online things. So my website would be best.
Okay. And what I'd like to do is ask you to share some closing thoughts on our conversation, and if there's any words of inspiration and hope for anyone that may be listening that needs to hear your message, what would it be this evening?
To do your very best to live in the present moment with an attitude of gratitude. That no matter what the pain is, the struggle, the stress, if you can connect with the attitude of gratitude, you can shift your neurobiology, your biochemistry, your field of energy. So the attitude of gratitude, it could be small. It could be, I'm grateful for 10 fingers and 10 toes. I'm grateful that I can blink my eyes. I'm grateful that I can breathe. And I even write them down. So doing your very best each day to show up in the present moment, regardless of what it feels like around you or looks like around you, regardless of the labels, and show up with an attitude of gratitude, it'll change your life.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to take one last moment here to acknowledge and thank those that joined us live and in our community this evening, whether you're live or you catch us on replay. You showed up just on time, your time. I would like to ask you if you could at some point acknowledge and respond to some questions or comments that people in the community have shared by going back onto the replay. And with that, thank you so much for joining me this evening on Real People, Real Health. I hope you'll take me up on my offer and join me at the new year at some point in 2020 so that we could have another moment of clarity and continue our conversation on healing the mind, body, and soul, coming home, and how to live a life of truths and wholeness. And with that, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, and may all of us continue to find our answers within, so that we can live a life of inner peace and wellness as we all so much desire. And with that, have an incredible weekend. Do some self-care. Put down that to-do list. There's nothing on that list that is as important as first taking care of yourself. It can all wait. Take care of yourself first, and then show up for that to-do list and the people in your life. And with that, it's a wrap. We'll catch you next time on Real People, Real Health. Thank you so much for joining us, Kristin Grayce.
Thank you. It's been an honor.